Prime Minister Mark Carney has returned from his high-stakes trip to the United Kingdom, and the fallout is only just beginning. For several days, Carney was in London meeting with world leaders, business executives, and investors. His goal was clear: to prove that Canada is no longer a junior partner to the United States and that our country can stand on its own in a world shaken by tariffs, wars, and political chaos. But not everyone is convinced. Opposition leader Pierre Poilievre slammed the trip as yet another expensive foreign junket, questioning whether Carney is truly focused on the needs of Canadians at home. The question now is simple: was this a wasted trip or a turning point in Canada's global strategy?
I think that this government was elected at the end of April, sworn in mid-May, got a massive piece of legislation, Bill C-5, enacted just before the summer in June, right after they got elected, that will allow the building of infrastructure projects that will be transformative, and that's the word they keep using, but it's going to be true. And the other thing that the government is doing, and that's why Prime Minister Carney was in London, he had to meet with a lot of the people in charge of the bankrolling of that type of mega project and explain to them that Canada is changing its fiscal rules. The tax rules will make it more friendly for people to come and invest in this country. And that is something that doesn't take days or weeks. It takes months and years. I believe that Peter MacKay knows that, but it was very charitable of him to take Poilievre's place and give that little explanation, because I think that even Poilievre must get tired of hearing Poilievre complain about everything that Mark Carney does.
This wasn't Carney's first overseas mission, but it may have been his most important yet. Unlike past prime ministers who leaned almost entirely on Washington, Carney is deliberately charting a different course. In London, he made his pitch: Canada is changing the rules of the game, cutting red tape, opening space for private investment, and laying the foundation for long-term growth. But as experts noted, these are not changes that show results overnight. This is groundwork that takes months, even years, to bear fruit. That's where Carney's credibility comes in. As a former central banker with deep ties to global finance, he can open doors that most leaders can't. He isn't just telling investors that Canada is open for business, he's convincing them that Canada is worth betting on. Context, however, is everything. And the backdrop for this trip wasn't a quiet world stage, it was Donald Trump. As the current US president, Trump has doubled down on tariffs, threatened allies with new trade barriers, and made it clear that he will always put America first, no matter the cost to others. His speeches at the UN and in Washington have left allies scrambling, asking, if the US can no longer be trusted as a stable partner, who do we turn to? That's where Carney stepped in. In London, he presented Canada as a stabilizing force, standing alongside Britain's Keir Starmer, Spain, Denmark, and others. Carney's message was clear: Canada is part of a bloc of democracies that value stability, cooperation, and long-term strategy, the exact opposite of Trump's chaos.
That's the world we're living in. Reasonable, moderate, intelligent people like Carney, like Starmer, like others who got together this week are saying, how are we going to deal with this? Is it temporary? Is something that we're going to have to deal with longer term? The world of Trump and America that goes along with Trumpism long after Trump is gone. So they're saying, look, we've got to come up with better trade deals for ourselves. Canada has to be thinking long term. And if Peter MacKay and Pierre Poilievre don't like it because they think everything should have been done like that, he's just showing that he's lost a lot of his hand in the experience that he once had in the case of MacKay.
The most concrete element of Carney's London trip was trade. For decades, Canada has relied heavily on the United States for exports, investment, and economic growth. But with Trump in office, those ties have become risks. His tariffs on steel and aluminum, his threats of new trade barriers, and his willingness to weaponize economic policy have exposed just how dangerous over-reliance can be. That's why Carney has pushed diversification harder than any of his predecessors. Canada already has the CETA agreement with Europe, a renewed and rebalanced deal with Mexico, and a major new trade agreement with Indonesia. This isn't just paperwork, it's insurance. Insurance against Trump's next tariff threat, against US unpredictability, and against the idea that Canada's prosperity should depend on whoever happens to sit in the White House.
We already have a strong trading relationship with the United Kingdom, and they are signatories to the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. So I'd actually probably look for the biggest news would be a timeline on the part of Mark Carney for when Canada will accept the UK as part of that trade agreement, because that would give us a strong, lasting, multilateral free trade agreement with the UK that we could build on.
Robert, as you were saying, this is the second visit of the Prime Minister to London amongst other trips, other foreign trips he's had, about 10 of them or more since March. Your take on the message the Prime Minister is sending to the world, and how are things materializing for Canada outside of North America?
So I think he's been hitting the ground running, and it's what we call summit season. You get a lot of summits, a lot of conferences, and we saw that here where Carney met with the UK, but also with a half dozen other world leaders. And that really goes to show the value of these trips. I mean, we've talked a lot about the need to diversify trade away from the US. It's hard to diversify trade if your leader is unwilling to travel and actually meet with other world leaders to try to hash things out. I'd like to see more from Carney. I'd like to see more engagement. I'd like to see more announcements of strategic partnerships and initiatives. But I think given the climate we have, and given the fact that, like I said, we have that CPTPP with the UK, we have CETA with the European Union, and we have the CPTPP and CUSMA with Mexico, a lot of this is just strengthening what we have in place.
Of course, Canadians at home want to know, how does this help me? Carney's answer is resilience. By building alternatives, Canada protects jobs, industries, and families from being dragged into Washington's trade wars. It means Canadian steelworkers don't lose their paychecks because Trump wants to score political points. It means Canadian farmers can rely on markets in Europe and Asia, not just in the US. And it means Canadian technology, clean energy, and manufacturing sectors can grow without being strangled by American protectionism. Opposition leader Pierre Piave and other critics argue that Carney is distracted by foreign trips while housing prices, affordability, and inflation remain pressing challenges. But Carney's counter is clear. He is securing global markets and foreign investment, laying the groundwork for long-term solutions that outlast short-term politics. The London trip was also a political gamble. By putting Canada on the global map, Carney is trying to redefine what leadership looks like at home. To his supporters, he is the first Prime Minister in decades to give Canada true independence from Washington. To his critics, he is a globe-trotting banker more interested in international applause than in the struggles of ordinary Canadians. Is that criticism justified? This divide will shape the battles ahead in Parliament, especially as Trump's tariff threats escalate. Carney is making the case that Canada can stand tall on the world stage. So, what did his London trip achieve? Not instant results. Not flashy headlines. But the groundwork for a strategy Canada has talked about for decades and never fully embraced: independence, resilience, diversification to be why courting investors, securing trade alternatives, and positioning Canada as part of a bloc of stable democracies. Carney is rewriting Canada's role in the world. Whether Canadians embrace that vision or reject it will determine not just his future, but the country's in a world increasingly shaped by Donald Trump. This is Canada Today. Subscribe now for sharp, fact-driven analysis of the stories reshaping Canada's place in the world.